Welcome to Headway 101. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about designing your Headway website using the Visual Editor so you can make your website look pretty and such. My name is Corey Freeman, and in case you don't know me, I run Headway101.com. Headway 101 is basically the place for you to get tutorials and downloads and documentation and training like this webinar. And if you click the button at the bottom, if you're already a member, there are some free tutorials and community stuff and so on and so forth. That's enough of that. Let's get down to the fun part. Alright, this is what Headway looks like by default. So today we're going to talk about designing it, where all the options are and what they are, and also a little bit of CSS, and we're going to talk about skins. So I'm just going to start with showing you guys around the design editor, and then I'll take questions. And this webinar is not going to be 90 minutes long, I can tell you already, but I blocked that time off just in case anything weird happens. Alright. Open up the Visual Editor in design mode. And here we have the design editor. You can X out of this tiny box in the corner. Alright, so we have over here our layouts that are available. Any layout that you modified in the grid will show up here in the design editor. We've got down here our options. We've got the inspector, which is what allows us to click on things and have them show up in the bottom panel. And we've got some tools up here, which is where our live CSS is. So let's just start with the basic. Over here in the editor, you're going to work with this panel to select your blocks and such. And then the options will load on the right. So for the body, we've got the background. I can select a color using the color picker. You can also put a hex value in here. Let me open up my color picker. This is called Name That Color. If you Google Name That Color, you'll get this website. It's pretty cool because you can select a bunch of colors from this drop-down list, and it gives you the tags for them. And you can paste it in here in the box. You hit save after you've made a change, and view site. Obviously the change appears in the visual editor, but if you view site, you can see what it looks like. Okay. You can also add background images, which I think I have one of already uploaded. This uses the WordPress media uploader. So any images that you add to your website will appear in the back end in the WordPress dashboard. If I open that up and go to media, you can see here this texture is actually what I used as the background. And if I reload on the front page, it appears here too. So that's pretty cool if you need to permanently get rid of some uploads if you don't use specific design elements here or there. You can use a photograph, so let me go ahead and see if I can find one. I guess I probably have one actually on my computer. I guess I could use this desktop I got. So if you wanted to use a bigger image instead of a tiled image, this little arrow moves that back and forth. You can do that. You can set it to not repeat, or to repeat horizontally, or to repeat vertically. You can move the image around using positioning. And then you can make the image go with you as you scroll, or you can have it stay as a static background. Excuse me. So those are all the options for backgrounds as demonstrated through this body background. Any questions about backgrounds? Because it works the same for all elements moving forward. All right. I think there's a lag in the chat, but I usually give it a couple seconds. I actually kind of like that background, so we'll just keep it. Moving on. So the body is the document, like the whole window in your browser, for those of you that are not familiar with the terminology. The wrapper is the area where all of your blocks are. Okay, so we have the inspector enabled, and it shows us the margins, which is this orange-yellow kind of highlight going on. And then it shows us the padding, which is this purple-blue. And then it shows us the dimensions of the thing we're working on. So this is the wrapper dimensions, this red dotted line. If you disable the inspector by clicking the button, it'll just show you what it'll look like live. So we got the background, which we went over. There's also borders, so I'll disable the inspector so you can see this better. Borders are the lines that go around things. So you can pick your border color using the color picker. Style would be solid, dashed, hidden, or double, depending on what kind of border you want. And then you can customize how thick the border is in pixels. So there's 5% all around would give us this thick black border. And then I'm using Colorzilla, which is a Firefox plugin. So it's like an eyedropper, and I can just stick that hex value in to get that dark green blue color from the background. So that is a border. Padding. Again, we're talking about this blue area. By default, the wrapper has a 15 pixel padding all around. You can change that individually to whatever. You can get rid of it completely. But it'll show up as blue when you enable the inspector, and you can see what it'll look like if you disable the inspector. And then Deborah B is asking if you can add a wrapper to include just some of the blocks, for example, all but the footer. No, I'm not really certain I understand your question, but there's only one wrapper in this version of Headway. So this particular, I think maybe you're thinking customizing different layouts, which is a thing we talked about in the previous webinar, which is available on YouTube. But no, you can't add more than one wrapper via Headway. Okay. Padding is different from margins, by the way. Padding adds white space, and margins is the spacing between blocks. For a quick explanation. Let's move on to rounded corners. Rounded corners are also built in, so you can do like a super rounded corner, and you can change them up individually, just like the border. So I could, I don't know, have a weird leaf-like shape, or have it super rounded on one end. Whatever your preferences are. Box shadow is this funny looking light we have. It's basically a drop shadow for elements. To get rid of, you can change the vertical offset, which is, and the horizontal offset, which is like how far it is from whatever side. And you can make it more prominent by adding blur. And you can get rid of it by setting all these to 0 if you're not a giant fan of drop shadows. Okay, nudging is a thing where you can move elements around and sort of change how they appear on top of one another. We're not really going to talk about nudging because I use CSS or margins for things like that. I'm not a big nudging fan. It doesn't always work the way I want it to. So I'm going to skip over nudging. And then margins is again the space between elements. So by default, the wrapper has a 30 margin on top, but I can get rid of that to push it right up against the window, or add some to push it down. And the same goes for the bottom. Whoops. Excuse me. All right. Anyone confused about any of those things? And then, I'm not going to get this name right. Yahira Tsu from Peru is asking, if you change the header block to use a custom block as a header, it will recognize as the header for my web. Be sure to stick header HTML tags around your content, because no, it's not just going to load as the header, since it's just an arbitrary code block. But for the meanwhile, let's focus on design-based questions so we can stay as on topic as possible. Okay, we're going to move on to some other elements. And I'm going to reload the front page so you can see how it looks now. All right. Now, that's the body and the wrapper. Let's talk about blocks. So I'm going to enable the inspector. Actually, I lied. I'm not going to enable the inspector. Down here in the blocks, you have all of the blocks that you have installed on your Headway installation available, and their options. So here I have the header block, and you can see it comes with all of the previous options, and now we have fonts, which is how you choose fonts, and overflow, which is sort of a thing that you can mess with for different display options. Like if you wanted part of a block, the content, to be able to go outside the borders of that block, that's what overflow is. But yeah. If you're not using a header image, you can customize the site title by clicking on Site Title. Fonts, here you can choose the basic web-safe fonts, or you can choose Google Fonts. To get Google Fonts to work, all you need to do is have your license key entered in to the Headway options, under Headway and Options. Once it's verified, you can access Google Fonts from within the design editor. Just checking to make sure, because some people had questions about that last time. That's all you need to do to enable Google Fonts, so if it's not working, disable any plugins that you have that are font related, or put a message on the support forums because you might be experiencing an issue with your host or something. Back to fonts. Excuse me. I'm gonna pick Oswald because everyone loves it. So you can change the font family, aka font face. You can change the size up to 72 pixels. Again, we have the color. Down here, by the way, what these are color swatches. And basically, when you choose a color using the color picker, Headway will now add it down here. And I have a bunch of them from doing previous webinars, which is why I'm overflowing with color swatches. But you can choose a swatch, or you can mess with the preset, whatever you have going on. I guess I'll make it green. I like green. Font styling, bold, italic, or bold italic. Google fonts look kind of weird in bold, so don't panic if that's what happens. That's just a thing that seems to be the trend with those. And then Computer King is asking what the difference is between Google fonts and regular fonts. That's a good question, actually. So these traditional or regular fonts are just fonts that everyone has on their computer. And for a browser or for a user to be able to see the font properly, they have to have it installed on their computer. Google Fonts is a library of fonts available from Google at google.com/webfonts. And basically it's like an API that developers tap into to be able to add cool looking fonts to their websites without having to do a bunch of mess. So Google fonts are just fancier, and there's like 500 of them. So don't spend hours picking a font unless you have the time. Alright. The line height is basically the height of spacing between paragraphs. Let's make that 120. Alignment, left, center, or right, depending on where you want it. Capitalization, uppercase, lowercase, small caps. Letter spacing, you can squish the letters together or move them far apart, up to 3 pixels. And then underline, you can choose whether or not you want an underline. So those are all the font options as far as picking fonts and messing with them goes with the design editor. And yes, the browser will pull them in from Google with the Google fonts as far as where they're coming from. Excuse me. Text shadow is like a drop shadow specifically for the text. So same thing with box shadow, but for words. And yeah, sometimes the swatches don't like to go away, which is awesome. I'll just leave it like that. That's pretty cool. My goal during this webinar is not only to show you how to do this stuff, but also to end up with something that doesn't look totally awful at the end. Because last time I was just sort of picking colors randomly, and it's a very strange result. Alright. Site tagline, again, I'm just selecting header from blocks and picking the site tagline. So you can do the same thing with the fonts, box shadow, borders, etc. And so on and so forth. So this one I can make Arial. I can unitalicize it, center it. I don't know. Make it black or dark gray. Okay. These changes that I'm making thus far are universal. So if I go to the About page, they all show up. If I go to the blog page, my blog index, it shows up. If I go to Uncategorized, which is a category archive. So these changes thus far are based on, everything. Alright, let me show you how to switch layouts and then how to customize blocks individually. So, switch layouts over here in the layout selector. Highlight the one you want, click view. It'll say currently editing, and it'll also say switched to. if you enable the inspector, in addition to being able to see what you're working on, when you select a block, it'll also give you the instance of that block. So, an instance is just what it sounds like. It's where you put that type of block on the grid. On this blog index, I have 2 instances of widget areas. So when I enable the inspector, I can select either or. And then I'll show you what that means is that I can make this left-hand widget have a gray background without changing the background of this right-hand widget. So that's what instances do. It doesn't work for sub-elements, so if I go into widget area and then the widget title, I can't choose an instance for those. Those are all universal changes, but I can for the block itself. So that is a quick explanation of instances. Does that make sense? And that one's confusing too. Okay, cool. Looks like that went over pretty well. If you want to make universal changes, again, you can just select the block. So in this case, oh, and if you want to switch between instances, there's a drop down over here. I'll make that one. Oh, that's not even on the, yes it is. Oh, you know what? It's because I'm mirroring that. I don't know where I think that that is, but there we go. Choose the right instance. Okay. So you can make individual changes to blocks, or if you want to revert back, click the little X that says set property to inherit, and it'll go back to feeding off of your defaults, which is when you're not picking an instance, or whatever Headway has set by default if you're doing other things. You might have to save and reload though to make it work. And then Computer King is asking if you could change the title using custom CSS for widgets. Yes. And I'll go ahead and actually show you guys, since there's no reason to sit here and wobble through a bunch of different design elements that we've covered. Okay, I'm using Firebug for Firefox, but there are also the Chrome inspector, and if you use Google Chrome, I think Safari comes with its own also. But with Firebug, what I do is I right click, and you can actually do 2 things. You can use the block ID, meaning each block comes with its own individual ID number. In this case, if you disable the inspector and you roll over a block, you can see it. In this case, this widget is number 11 and this one's number 9. But also, widget areas and widgets all have their own little classes, in case you want to style the actual widgets individually. But to answer Computer King's question, to open the live CSS editor, go to Tools and then Live CSS. And what this does is it lets you type in your own custom CSS code and it will change instantly. So I can do body.custom number block 11.widget title, color blue, And you can see now my widget titles will change on that one and not that one. And you can see it previewed in the visual editor. Excuse me. Okay, and then Rich Roth is asking how to permanently change the default font that Headway always selects. So here's the thing. You sort of have to change the fonts one by one right now. If you go into defaults and then go to paragraph text, the default font for Headway is Palatino, but over here you can select Arial, and it'll affect a lot of different areas. But basically, so to change my content, I need to go to Content, Body Text, Fonts, and change that. And then to change the navigation, it would be the same thing. So there's no mass font change right now. Okay. Kathy is asking, how do you know the correct syntax to use for the live CSS window? It differs from traditional CSS. No, it doesn't. Writing CSS is basically like learning a coding language or another language. You think of it as like words in English, or letters of the alphabet, as opposed to code snippets you have to learn. So in this case, we're going to do a CSS webinar, by the way. Body.custom is just what I prefix with. It's a throwback to version 1 of Headway, but I could remove it. But basically, I'm just selecting the body, the whole document, and it's got this class custom applied to it. Like, it'll still work if I remove that. # or hash block 11 is the ID 11, and then .widget title is the class applied to this text, the widget title. And then open bracket color blue is just what I want it to be. So as far as learning syntax goes, that's just, you just practice and then you get to know it. But it's not any different from that. There are curly braces. These are curly. I can't really, I guess I can make it bigger. They're curly. Oh, that's too small. Okay. All right. I actually really don't like that blue. Let's talk about customizing for the current layout. So we have the current layout, meaning what we're currently editing, the blog index. You can change things up. So if I go to customize for current layout, which is this button over here, and when you click it, it then says customize for regular element to switch back. I can, oh, actually, what did I want to do? I want to go to the title, and I want to do customize for current layout. And then I want to do fonts, font size. And then, let's say I want to make my entry titles huge for some reason. So when you customize for the current layout, it's going to change the title to bigger, but on my home page, it's going to stay relatively small. So you can see the difference. So that's what that button does. And then you can do the same thing with any of the elements as far as that goes. Like I could customize the current layout for the wrapper too and make it a different background color if I wanted. Whoops. I think I can make it darker. I totally hit the title again. My bad. But yeah, it works for every element. Okay, I'm trying to think of anything I might have missed. All right, let's do the H titles because that's another thing I want to make sure I cover. And then someone asked about vertical space, so we'll do that too. For some reason, Headway is combining H2, H1, H2, and H3 tags. I don't know why, but if you change one of them, I don't know why I picked Arial. I guess I'll change the font to show you. They all change, so you can see this is the H2 and this is the H3. And if I set them to 50, they'll both go to 50. And if I set them to 30, and if I change the color. So in the live CSS, what you want to do is body.custom.entry content H3 or 6 or 2 or whatever number. And then you can change the font size or the color or even the margins. So that is how you would modify those individually. Okay. I'm not gonna get this right. Sorry. I'm just gonna call you Sue. Sue from Peru is asking how to get the content of a text block to look exactly like the content block. So I don't think I have a text block. Or maybe I do. I do at the bottom. Cool. So basically you just use the same settings. You can use the defaults affect the text block. But if you go down to editor, also if you right click on blocks while in design mode, it'll open up their block options. But let me open up the text block and get rid of this. Oops. I'll just get rid of the text. All right. This is new text for the text block, and then this is. I think I was showing people how to modify the text in here, but it's got background and color and bold and italic. Well, let's save and reload. Okay. So, go down to blocks, over here on the left, text, and then text again for the actual content, and you can change the font family to whatever you want it to be, the font size, the line height. Basically just make the settings the same as your content block, and you'll be good to go. Okay. Alright. Kathy, to set up Google Fonts, what you have to do is just input your license key into Headway options. And then Maurizio is asking how to change a hover for different widgets. Do you mean a specific widget or widgets in general as far as widget links go? Okay, so to change them for specific widgets, you would have to use CSS. So in this case, for this recent posts widget, if I highlight it, it would be, you can see here it has the class recent posts 3, or the ID, sorry, recent posts 3. So I would go into the visual editor, and I would do body. I just prefix with body.custom. Technically, you don't actually have to add that part, but it'd be li and then # for ID. Oh, and then a:hover. A being the link and :hover being the pseudo class for hover, and then you could change it to whatever. So that's just more of a learning to navigate inspectors for elements, source code, and applying the rules of CSS. So you can see the recent post changed, but my blog roll didn't. Is how that works. Alright, I think I've actually totally run out of things I wanted to show you guys, so let's go ahead and take the next 15 minutes and we'll do questions. I mean, we could do questions for the next 45 minutes, but that is... Oh, Computer King is right. I did forget skins. I swear I was forgetting something, and luckily you guys have me covered. So let's talk about skins. Alright, a skin is the export of a style, basically, of all the customizations you've done. Skins differ from child themes in that you can make them right from the visual editor, and they'll export layouts if you have templates. To make a skin, go to skins, go to export, name your skin. We'll call this green because I can't think of anything. You can include the live CSS or not include it depending on if you want to. And then you can include layout templates selectively if you have any templates made. There are no templates on this demo though. Then you download the skin file. It will be a .json file. So save it and it'll download. I'm going to save and reload because skins don't like to import and export at the same time. Or really even. Let me save it. Go. Okay. To import a skin, go to skins and then import. And here you can choose whether or not you want to keep your CSS and whether or not you want to upload the skins templates. And then I have to find mine. Go to wherever you've downloaded your skin, select the .json file, and open it. This is just the default Headway look I happen to save as a skin. So that's how skins work, and it'll reload. And I'll show you again. I'm gonna see if it'll do it again twice. Give it a second. Yep, woohoo! And our skin is back. Our designs from earlier are back. I just imported the green skin we just exported. Is what happened. Okay. So on skins, Rich Roth is asking, is skin site level or page level? It is site level, as in it will export global settings. Let me scroll up. Okay. Deborah Brandt wants to know how you hide parts of the footer now that the manage button is gone. Do I have a footer on here? Yeah. Let me go to my footer. Open up the block options. And let me go to the front page because I'm mirroring my footer. But this works in grid mode or design mode. Open up the block options by right-clicking or clicking show options for this block, and then you can just hide stuff selectively. It doesn't want to reload for me when I change block options, but there you go. is how that works. Okay, I missed one. Sue from Peru is asking, how do I make a transparent header only, not the rest of the site? And what I think she's asking about is basically fluid headers. There's not a way to make fluid elements in Headway right now as of version 3.4.4, which is what we're using. But you can fake it. So I can show you kind of how that works. I'm going in order, by the way, so you don't need to repost your questions. I know some people last time were doing that, but I see them, don't worry. Okay, so I'm going to move the header all the way up, and then you basically have to cheat. There's not a way that you can do it right now, but I'm going to take a screenshot of that area and use it as a background image. So basically what you could do is, if you want a body background, get your body and then upload your other image into the media uploader that you want to use for your fluid header. There's a tutorial on this on Headway 101, by the way, if you're a subscriber, about doing fluid headers and footers. But I'm just going to show you my method real quick. So upload your image, grab your image URL, which I just did lightning fast, sorry. And then body.custom div number white wrap, which is, it comes right after the body, and it's just another div that wraps around the whole website for styling. And then you would do background URL, the URL to your image, repeat X for repeat horizontally. And my screenshot of that image was really, really awful. But basically, that's how you would fake a fluid header. Oh, and then you could also do body.custom header, which is the HTML tag for the header. Margin left, negative whatever your, what do you call it? Your background happens to be, and then width, usually 103.2% works. And I think I might have to get rid of my borders for this to work. Yeah, but that's how I cheat. That's a really bad example. That turned out really awful. But you can't make just the header transparent because it's inside the wrapper, so that doesn't work. But you can cheat and make it fluid, and you could take a screenshot or a clip of the back of where the background image would make and make it the background of the header. I did not have an example prepared for that, so I'm sorry. But that's basically the method. Put that back. All right. Matthew wanted to know, when using a background image, what is the best size to make it and how do you get it small? It depends on the background image. If you're using a large background image, just use a JPEG and make sure you shrink it using something like Smush It. Sorry, hang on. I can't spell the word smush. Smush. Smush It is an image optimizer, so you can just run your background image through it and it'll make it tinier. If you're just using a tile, there's a plugin for Smush It, by the way. It's called WP Smush It. I'll type it in here, but it's WPSMUSHIT, and that'll optimize all your images. But if you're just using like a tiled background, just as small as one repetition would be. This background image that we're using is actually a desktop background from smashingmagazine.com, and this one is 1,440 pixels wide by 900 pixels tall, and that's just because that's the resolution of my screen, because I'm using it as a background. And then Rich wants to know how to add maintained or developed by to the footer. If you want to add your own text to the footer, use a custom code block or a text block instead of a footer block. And then just like with the header block, you would wrap it in footer tags. So HTML5, it would just be arrow, footer, arrow, and then arrow / footer, arrow, as opposed to trying to mess with the actual footer block. Okay. Lindy Franklin wants to know, I have to use Safari for Headway. Because Firefox isn't showing the content behind the grid in grid mode. I don't quite know what you mean, but I think I have an idea. Let me go to the blog index. Sometimes when you edit stuff, it doesn't show the right content in the content block. It looks like they might have fixed that in an update, actually. But that's a thing that didn't happen before, so I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what you're asking me. I would ask the support guys about that. Okay, they're saying it's not pulling the content at all in grid mode. It doesn't show up in grid mode. I guess when you mean preview. So when I go into grid mode, my content doesn't show up. It just says content. I guess I can click preview and it might show up. If you hit preview, it'll show up, but nothing shows. But it could be browser related. I'm using Firefox right now. So that's my take on it. My previous webinar totally does not show the content in grid mode. Because the content doesn't show in grid mode anymore. Or maybe I have to go back and look at it because that's very strange. It only ever shows just content and block options. Okay. I'm gonna move on. Sorry. Computer King wants to know where you would add the footer tags if you were using a different whatchamacallit, a different block for the footer. So let me move this text block, which is randomly outside. Okay. That was bothering me for a while. Okay, you'd open up the text block, or custom code block would show you code, but you would just do footer, whatever content you were doing, and then / footer. This turned into a Q&A, but that's fine. That's fine. It's all about customizing. Sue is asking again about just wanting to put the logo sort of transparent. You have to make the whole site transparent, like the whole wrapper, and then mess with it. It's not possible to make just the header transparent at this point. But what I showed before is sort of like a cheat you could use. So using part of the background image of the body as the background image for the header. I don't know if I'm able to cheat and do that, but I guess I can try. So if I set the wrapper to transparent, and then let me disable the border, and I'm going to use CSS to hide my header real quick, or at least my site title. Okay. So basically what I could do is cheat and grab this section, and I already know it's not going to come out right, but I'm going to try my best. And then I'll put the wrapper background back to white. Okay. And I would set the header background to that section of my background image. And then mess with it a little, I guess. So I'm not gonna go any further and spend like 20 minutes on that, but yeah, that's basically what I would do. I don't remember what the backdrop theme even looks like. Computer King was asking if they were cheating, faking it with the backdrop theme. I'm pretty sure the backdrop theme has the whole wrapper transparent, because you can make the whole wrapper transparent, you just can't make one particular block transparent. Let's take a look at the wrapper is transparent and all the blocks have their own backgrounds. That's the other way around than what is asking to do. What Sue is asking. Okay. Maurizio is asking if it's possible to make a fluid layout with Headway. Again, you have to cheat right now. They're saying that a fluid update is coming, but as of 3.4.4, which is what we're using, no, you can't click buttons and make it fluid. And I do have my method of cheating in a tutorial. If you are a member of Headway 101, which, for your information, is $19 a month or $149 a year, you can access this particular tutorial, which is how to create fluid headers and footers. Log in and you can check it out. Alright, we covered skins, we covered margins and such, CSS, which we'll delve more into later. That apparently was specific. No, I just did that the other day. Alright. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I think end the recording here. Since design is mostly just a practice thing, I think we covered a lot of good stuff. You guys can stick around and ask me a couple questions, or you can dip out. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully this recording will have sound so you can actually see it. All right, thank you.